大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokamasi, and with me is my lovely co-host, Fefner Masamune.
Hello, I'm here. Got nothing prepared.
We can't make yet another Three Houses joke.
Like, all the relevant jokes are kind of political, and I mean, in ways that are either too depressing or good to really make jokes about in Lupad form. The world is burning, which sucks, but also a ghoul's dead, which is great, but, you know, don't want to connect that to the ganglars.
The best, ironic keep your politics out of my video game thing I think I've ever seen was in Chroma Squad, so it's relevant. After every episode, you get, random tweets that were supposedly sent while your episode was airing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ones you can get is a show where the good guys win and the bad guys lose. Keep your politics out of my shows.
That rules.
The Chroma Squad writing team is actually really good. They're a little memey, both in this and their pen and paper games, but they're really good, actually. They have a good sense of tone for what they're making.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, that's a bit of a long intro for what we normally do, because we are a Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger recap and review podcast. Today we're talking about episode 39. But before we start, I want to talk a bit about something that has a surprisingly messy history regarding Sentai and Power Rangers. So I'm going to be calling it the Battleizer, because that's the Power Rangers version. But it's sort of had a weird back and forth for Sentai and Power Rangers. Mm-hmm. So the phrase Battleizer comes from Power Rangers in Space. That was the last Power Ranger show of the Zordon era. It was going to be the last one that Saban made because they were going bankrupt. It was also based on a video game Sentai, but they already spent all the money on the intro, the copyrights, the logos, before they realized it was a video game Sentai, so they just went, fuck it. It will be less expensive to spend more on sets and cockpits than it will be to change everything we've already made.
Yep.
Which is interesting, because they made a show good enough to, revive the brand. And the reason I mentioned that is because around halfway, or at least some point through the show, they wanted another Red Ranger toy to sell. So they made another, suit of armor for their Red Ranger and called it a Battleizer. Mm-hmm. And that was a thing in Power Rangers for a while. I think they stopped after a while. But the reason it gets messy is because Sentai have been doing similar things for a while. The first thing like this was in Dynaman, which was actually another Sentai brought over to the US. It was a 6-episode dub. That was a joke dub.
Oh dear.
But, one of the Rangers that wasn't even the Red Ranger could, change his armor and become stronger. The only part where, these actually aligned, because the interesting thing about Battleizers is that they're made for Power Rangers and they don't show up in Sentai. Mm-hmm. With one exception, the one for Power Rangers SPD made its way into the Deca Ranger crossover movie. They use the same prop, but the powers are completely different.
Okay.
Between Sentai and Power Rangers, which is interesting. So I bring this up because it's sort of shaped how I view the power-ups that happened last episode. I think a lot of people expect the power-ups to go to Red and Ichigo because American viewers are used to Battleizers. But in Sentai, the power-ups just sort of go wherever. Usually it's team-wide or Red only, but it can just happen to any random member. If you scroll through the Super Rangers page, and Super Ranger is the official term for this sort of power-up in Sentai, It'll be like red and yellow, or red and pink, or red and green.
Much like good striker, they can just wander where they please.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't have the same expectation of it has to go to the Red Ranger, even though it does a lot of the time. And there's usually only one Red Ranger to worry about. But what I'm getting at is that what happened last episode is what happens in every Sentai show. People get very upset.
What? They're powering up again?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that it's not super modern. Dynaman, I think, was mid-80s. And Sentai's been around since the late 70s, I think. And one of the not interpretations, but like reads of the show is that the Pot Rangers are mostly a throwback to the much older Sentai. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason they don't power up as much. And they don't get as many new special finishers.
They can't afford them. Just not in the budget.
So I mostly just wanted to talk about the history of this sort of power-up. And how my mind went to Battleizer, because that was one of the few things the Power Rangers did more or less on their own. That wasn't in Sentai at all, but occasionally gets reintegrated into Sentai. Mm-hmm. There's only one time where Sentai used the phrase Battleizer. They've also used the word Zord as for one of the monsters of the week. Well, its giant weird form, they just called it a Zord. It's like, all right, Toei, tell us what you really think.
Oh, look at that Zord, so horrible.
What a monster, you sure will be glad when we kill it. But yeah, originally this was going to be talking about super modes in general, but I knew enough about the specific super mode that I want to talk about that. But the short version of super modes is I'm way into them. I love transformations.
Alright, and with that, it's time for episode 39. I'll bet on this. Today we begin at Police HQ, where Noel is alone in the office. He checks out Jim's computer and finds a file on Zamigo, who he notes as another status double gold. Just then, he hears Jim drawing near, so he closes out the screen by pressing the enter key somehow.
Couldn't even bother hitting the escape key.
No, enter just shuts the whole thing off. Jim, you've got a weird keyboard.
It's not anywhere close to two people typing on the same keyboard, but
just means you hack faster.
Has that same energy of this was written on a computer. The script for this episode was written on a computer. You know how computers do.
The scriptwriter should know this. The actor should know this.
Well, I know we all have phones now, but we still use computers a lot.
We know what an enter key is and what it does, and it's usually not just shut the screen down. Noel acts natural, and nobody is the wiser. Elsewhere, Kairi is out and about when he spots Kaiichiro. He tries to double back while he has the chance, but he can't hope to escape Kaiichiro's keen senses.
I detect a teenager in trouble.
Wait a minute, that's a Kairi. Where is he? Kaiichiro wanders on over and asks Kairi if he's doing any chores. Kairi manages to be evasive enough that he makes it away from the conversation, but a distant explosion draws the attention of both him and Kaiichiro, so it looks like they'll both be heading in the same direction anyway. Back at Jure, Noel arrives to ask Umika and Tuma if they've heard of a gangler named Zamigo. While they most certainly have, and the look on Umika's face says yes, Tuma says that they've never heard of him. Umika side-eyes Tuma, who looks just a little bit guilty. Roll the intro. We come back to Kaiichiro meeting up with Tsukasa and Sakia near the scene of the crime. They talk to a nearby fleeing couple, who tell them that there was some flying fried shrimp, which exploded. An ability like that is pretty distinct, so the cops have a good idea of who's behind this attack. However, there is one small hitch. It's the guy who died last episode. And sure enough, Isolop runs in alive and well. He tells the cops that Zamigo let him out of the ice, and Tsukasa realizes that Zamigo's ice guns don't kill people, probably, but instead just teleports them. Okay.
I'm sorry, the phrase ice guns don't kill people, just
Probably.
Zamigo does.
Maybe it's just a situation where he has to set it to teleport or kill.
I do like the idea that this is just a really elaborate teleport effect.
Mm-hmm.
He could have just done the go home thing, but no, he has to freeze you in ice to shatter the ice.
But yeah, it's a really casual way to just introduce that what the viewer thought was wrong all along. Kaitra asks if it matters, which, yeah, it does.
It super matters, because it's really jarring, because, like, the writers probably knew about this from the beginning, because the way that the Lupin Rangers talk about their loved ones, it's like they sort of either knew or suspected that they were teleported and not killed, because they talk about them being lost or gone, and not really in a censorship way, and they think that killing Zamigo will bring everyone back, and, like, up to this point, it's like, that's not how revenge works.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not clear if the Lupin Rangers were supposed to already know this, or if Kyrie just made a lucky guess.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more later, but... So they Kaisatsu change and start firing down shrimp missiles. Kairi sneaks onto the scene just in time to see Isolab's safe power. It levitates people. While the Pat Rangers can combat shrimp missiles on foot, they're helpless against them while dangling in the air. Isolab makes his escape before they hit the ground again, leaving them scrambling to find him. Kairi, though, sees an extremely extra man leaving the bushes and calling the cops dullards before leaving, while fanning himself. It's probably Isolab. I don't think anybody would bet against me on that one, though.
I'll bet on this.
You fool. That's not the thing you were supposed to bet on. You get the bad ending. While Kairi goes to follow Isolab, the cops return to HQ. They ask Noel if he's heard of a collection piece that freezes someone and teleports them away, but he hasn't, leaving them to assume that it's Zamigo's personal power. And since they don't know where Zamigo sends people, they still need to treat his ice gun as though it were lethal. But for now, Jim moves on to Isolab. The attacks are distinct enough that tracking him probably won't be an issue, so the team moves out. Noel, of course, has another stop to make. Somewhere else in town, Umika is sad. She remembers when Kairi told her and Tuma that Zamigo is their backup plan. Just then, Sakia happens upon her, sitting down on a bench, sadly. He asks her what's wrong, and Umika tells him that her and a good friend have a problem, which a new friend might be able to help with, but her first friend doesn't want to go for help. If Sakia thought about anything at all, he might be able to figure this one out. That's why this isn't Tsukasa here.
Sakia's head is just the intro playing on loop.
Sakia asks her which one is more important, her friendship or solving the problem. If she cares more about solving the problem, she should ask for help, even if it will lead to conflict. And with that helpful part of the advice out of the way, Umika thanks Sakia before he can present the alternative, and runs off. Sakia looks a little disappointed, but otherwise happy to help with this problem.
This scene was a long time coming.
Yeah. Hey, Sakia actually giving useful advice, isn't that nice?
I have a feeling we're going to talk about this more later, but I'd like everyone to take a look at the episode, at our episode title, realize what number we're on. That's how long it took.
Very, very long.
For a decent Sakia Umika scene.
At some other park, Kairi continues trailing Isolab when he gets a text from Tuma. He gives his answer, which worries Tuma somewhat, but Umika bursts into the restaurant before Tuma can go help, and tells him that they should ask Noel about Zamigo, considering he's, the only guy who knows anything about the subject at all. After some consideration, Tuma decides to go along with it. Elsewhere, Isolab is about to enter some kind of hideout when he's interrupted by a calling card flying in from outside. Lupin Red confronts him while we cut back to Jour, where Umika and Tuma have brought over Noel. Tuma apologizes for not telling him at first, but Noel doesn't mind. Umika asks if defeating Zamigo will bring back their loved ones, and Noel tells her their line of reasoning makes sense. According to the cops' intel, Zamigo's ice gun does teleport people elsewhere. Umika tells Tuma to inform Kairi of that, but when Tuma checks his phone, he sees a text from Kairi that just says, bingo. Well, that's a problem.
Tuma just texts back, Kyrie, I can't read English. I don't know what that means.
I can read French, but English, nah.
Oh, that's right, he knows. He knows what Roman letters are. Latin letters.
I've heard of this game, bingo. Back at the fight, Red is handling Isolov pretty well. Isolov tries to use his save power, but Red has a grappling hook, so floating's not a problem for him. He tackles Isolov to the ground and enters his safe combination 9-1-7 before retrieving Je me change en pierre, the first collection piece I've had to look up in a while. And thank goodness we didn't hear about this collection piece in the previous episode. Otherwise I would have had to spoil myself. Oh, this guy's alive. Huh.
I think they did that on purpose, because we've seen Ganglars without collection pieces before. So I think that because he's there and he just uses his weapon, they're like leading you to think that he doesn't have a collection piece. At least until this episode.
A few more shots from Red sends Isolov tumbling into some barrels, meaning he's ready for a special move. Red pulls out Victory Striker, wondering what kind of power it has. But suddenly, he hears the sound of a weirdo biting into a chunk of ice. Zamigo wanders into the scene, and thanks Isolov for bringing him an interesting target. Or, as they call it in the human world, using a shrimp as baits. You know, that common phrase.
Oh god, the only phrase that's coming to mind for me is tossing out a brick to attract jade, and that's a Chinese idiom. It's not even English. It's translated, but it's not an English phrase.
I don't know, maybe Japan just has that phrase. Just had some problems with fishermen using shrimp as bait. Don't do that, fishermen. Shrimp's too good. Zamigo laughs as he transforms before he and Red get into a firefight, or ice fight in Zamigo's case. Jim is alerted of the Ganglar fight, so the cops know to move out. Red has his hands full facing Zamigo and a very angry Isolov, but he at least manages to hold Isolov at bay, sort of. The other Lupins then rush in and are surprised that Zamigo is there as well. Red reacts quickly and throws scissors over to Blue before Zamigo can take them out of the fight. However, this leaves Red open, which Zamigo is quite aware of. He turns to finish him off, or just teleport him, I guess, but Red pulls out Victory Striker. Still unaware of its true power, Red figures he'll bet on that instead of relying on defense. Upon activating Victory Striker, he takes on a Super Kaito form. Zamigo says his new form is pretty slick, then fires because he doesn't give a fuck. Time slows, and Red sees a bullet coming right for him. Then the world distorts, Red shakes his head, and then once again hears Zamigo call him pretty slick. Red dodges in the nick of time, then manages to take out 2 more oncoming shots. That's right, folks, Red has Epitaph. He can predict all of Zamigo's movements, giving him a distinct advantage over the once formidable opponents. The rest of the cops arrive just in time to be impressed, as Red actually lands a shot on Zamigo, sending him to the ground. But he's not done just yet. He laughs as he stands up, and calls Red fantastic.
Alright, my internet cut out, so the timing for this joke is dead, but I was going to say, beware, Lupin Red's third gun bites the dust.
Red calls Blue and Yellow to his side so that they can turn his shoulder dials for him, charging up his special move. He sees Zamigo's movements once again and fires a beam. But, of course, Zamigo is clever enough to figure out what's going on. As he's running, he fires at Isolov, teleporting him to the perfect spot to shield him from Red's attack. Zamigo taunts Red as he's realized that Red can't predict every detail of what he's going to do, and makes his escape, a little more nonchalantly than he was a moment ago, at that. Red turns back to normal, and Kaitro notices just how intense he is. Intensity or no, Ghosh enters the scene and brings Isolov back to life. The large shrimp is now very mad at both the thieves and Zamigo, so the Lupin Rangers launch their newer Zords while X tells Goody to help them. By now you should be used to the fact that Goody just sort of appears.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even wander in anymore, he's just in X's hands.
I do like the gags they do with that, though.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of subtle, but it's just, he never reaches for Goody, he always just has Goody in his hand.
Yep.
It's really good.
They're best buddies.
Childhood friends who like to raise hell.
They form the Victory Lupin Kaiser with Victory Striker, Splash, and Magic. Big Shrimp is outmatched in a melee fight, so he decides to fry them instead. Like, literally, he shoots oil at them, and then the surrounding area is bathed in flames. But it's not a big deal, since they do have a fire truck for an arm, which can snuff out the fire with some fun-looking foam. I'm sure some kids got a kick out of that.
I'm sure they're disappointed that their Trigger Machine Splash can't actually do that.
If it were an American toy, maybe. Just really annoy their parents. Just
Oh,
shooting
yeah.
foam everywhere.
Oh yeah, when this makes it to America, there's going to be versions of the toys. It's like, you can actually get the, like, boost versions of the VS vehicles, I'm gonna guess.
It's just a really disappointing, like, gun that shoots the little yo-yo, but then you have to pretty much manually put it back in. Doesn't launch quite as much as you'd want. Then Isolab pulls out one final trick as he takes out a shrimp jetpack and starts firing shrimp missiles from the sky.
No, hold on. He didn't take out a shrimp jetpack. He took his bazooka that he's been using this whole time and put it on his back.
Ah, I see.
It can also do this. Let's not be ridiculous. He doesn't just materialize a jetpack out of nowhere. He had the jetpack the whole time, we just didn't realize it.
It was the friends he made along the way.
The real jetpack was the shrimp he was firing along the way.
But Goody has another trick up his sleeve, which happens to be the Victory Kaiser's flight mode. With some fine aerial mobility, the Victory Kaiser corners Isolab, traps him in a bubble, chains that bubble up, and finishes him off with the Good Striker Smack Him Down kick. Yes, it is a drop kick, and yes, it rules.
Oh, I forgot to listen. I don't remember if they call it Inazuna kick. Inazuna is like literally translated to falling lightning, and I can't remember why, but it gets thrown around for a lot of jump kicks.
That night, the cops are discussing Super Lupin Red. Kaitro wonders about Red's intensity, but like in an inner monologue, so nobody can hear him but the viewer.
We have to discuss the battle capabilities of our greatest foe. Okay, sure, but what about his feelings?
I feel like I need to get him and Kyrie in a room together and just talk out our emotions.
Get these kids to sort things out.
Back at Jour, Noel promises to keep quiet about Zamigo when Kogure is around. Once again, he promises that he's on their side, and he'll keep an eye on police intel. Umika is happy that they can get everyone back if they beat Zamigo, and Kyrie is confident that he can win as long as he has Victory Striker. But then it occurs to him that Noel didn't know about Zamigo, which means whoever he wants back was taken out by someone else entirely. Back in Hell, we see Destra has turned to drinking, having failed the Granio once again. Gauche walks in on his sulking and offers to help him get revenge. Despite his shame, Destra refuses, but as Gauche walks off, he stares intensely into a mirror. End of episode.
What a hell of a cliffhanger. It's a great cliffhanger because it doesn't have to be followed up next episode, but it's just there.
It's just real intense.
Daestra's coming back, and he's bringing hell with him at some point.
Either that or booze.
We talked about this a lot last episode, but they've done a very good job of keeping Daestra as a threat.
Yeah, now that he's slightly less of a threat, things have gone poorly for him, just emotionally.
It's that thing, like, way back when we were talking about recurring threats for the first time, you mentioned, oh god, Girahim from Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
And how you beat him easier the second time, and that just pisses him off, so he comes back even stronger again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to happen with Daystra, I think.
Yeah.
He got a little easier last time, so next time he's just going to show up with 2 hammers.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, like, you know, they've managed to maintain him as a threat, but, like, now that he's appeared enough, they've sort of realized that, like, this is the point where he has to sort of take a downturn emotionally to sort of match the progression of his character through the series.
He has to do something, not much, but something to reestablish himself as a threat. Because even just last episode, he was throwing the Rangers around like nothing. They had to pull out some ridiculous bullshit.
Yeah, so technically he is still a threat, but, like, now we can actually notice that, like, not winning against them multiple times has taken its toll on him.
Mm-hmm.
He has suffered consequences for his failures.
But enough talking about Daystra, because he was only in this episode for 10 seconds.
Yep, so Isola.
Let's talk about Stir Frido.
You know, like I said last episode, they of course work better as a pair, but I think Isolab is a bit better solo than his friends.
Yeah, he has a suit that allows for more expression, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
It's like, Janaku, what can he do? He can wave his tentacles around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Isolab is also just a little more expressive in his actual lines. His frustration is often palpable, and that's funny.
Yeah. And I do like his shrimp gun for how versatile it is.
Yeah.
It feels like bazooka oil jetpack is like some older shows will have a hero with very set abilities like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like how the Mach 5 has those 7 buttons and that's all it can do. It's not going to get any more powers.
Yep.
I don't know why, but his jetpack gun reminded me of stuff like that. So yeah, he's fun. He's interesting. It just makes me not super sad because I think the scene works best with Isolov getting taken out so suddenly.
Yeah.
It's really surprising. Like,
Yeah, so, like, he's an entertaining villain, but also he's very clearly, like, not the fight focus of this episode, in which the fight was a pretty major component of the episode.
yeah.
It was Amigo here to do a fight.
Yeah, much how, like, Janaku was there so that Daystra could also be there.
Mm-hmm.
Islav is here so Zavigo can also be here.
Yeah, so I do love his sort of attempted intrusions into the fight. It's pretty great. Like, you have this serious episode of Red having another showdown with Zamigo, and then there's Isolab just really trying to get into the fight because he's mad about his safe power being stolen, or his collection piece, rather.
And just the last thing Isolab does in the fight is get shot by Zamigo and then shot by Red.
Yep.
I forgot that he did that. That was the funniest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Time to use my teleportation powers defensively, assholes. Goodbye.
Got him.
Yeah, speaking of his powers... yeah, I'm used to it at this point, but it is still weird that it's just a teleportation effect.
Yeah, I don't really know if they handled this one well. Like, I don't necessarily mind that their loved ones aren't dead. I don't feel like you have to just have all characters die all the time. But also, you know, I don't think they intended you to not think they were dead at the start of the show. Like, it's pretty obvious that the viewer is supposed to think their loved ones are dead. That's why you have the scene with the cops discovering that.
It's weird because with a normal, like, missing persons thing, there's the extra, like, hope, which can cause even more problems that they might just turn up one day.
Mm-hmm.
These people are missing, but the Lupin Rangers don't have that hope. Because they know that, like, they're not just gonna suddenly escape.
Yeah.
So, this is a situation where if you make what appears to be the right decision at every turn, you will end up with the wrong result. Because, like, well, these are technically missing peoples, but they're not going to have anything that separates a missing person's grief from a dead person's grief.
Yeah.
So you just end up writing them as if they were dead. My subject stuff was a little strange in those past few sentences, but you know what I meant.
Yeah, I get it. Like,
I was talking to the viewers.
oh, I see.
I would never be so condescending to you.
But yeah, I feel like the discovery is far too mundane. Like, we discover it through the cops' reaction, but, like, the cops don't care because the only person they saw frozen was a ganglar. And thus Kaitro's response of, well, who cares what the ice gun actually does?
Right. It would be interesting if, like... Because, again, I don't think that they were trying to keep this information from the Lupin Rangers. It's implied that they kind of know.
It does seem like it, just because, like, it would have been a way more impactful scene, I think, if this was the first time they had discovered it.
Right. And if they wanted to do that, they could still, like, clue the audience in earlier by having, like, the police see it and not ever talk about it, because why do they care? Like, transport to a secondary location or shot, like, you're almost equally dead in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So...
But yeah, I think because the cops didn't know it, but they don't really react that strongly, and the Lupin Rangers seem to have known it, and therefore don't react to it that strongly, it's really weird because the viewers is supposed to react to it strongly, I think. Because it's such a big part of the show, not knowing the fates of everybody's loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just revealed here that now they were just teleported, so, like, it's basically just the Labrum Jaws episode, except Zamigo's smarter than Labrum, so they're more hidden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the main, like, takeaway for me is that I don't think that this was a last-minute decision.
No, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I think the teleportation thing was always what Zamigo was doing.
Yeah, it's
Because,
just...
like we've said, it's not like they were writing it in a way that this revelation doesn't make sense. If anything, it was written in a way where they thought the audience knew this sooner than they did.
Yeah, just from the way the Lupin Rangers were talking and just sort of... I guess the reactions of the other Ganglars as well. Because in the last episode, a best friend was just taken from one Ganglar, and he's only a little bit mad.
I will say I do appreciate the delivery of, he let me out of the ice.
It's so casual.
Like, come on. I was in the ice? No, I'm not in the ice. Do you think I chipped my own way out? I'm just glad that he's in there and we're out here and he's
I
still
just
out.
remembered he's the boss.
And I just remembered.
But yeah, I feel this revelation could have been done way better.
Yeah. It doesn't upset me. It doesn't turn me off the show at all.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
It's just weird, because this big thing ended up feeling like such a small thing. And
it doesn't feel like they... God, I'm trying to feel like the best way to describe this, because it's not like they built something up and got cold feet and made a big change at the last second. Like, they were planning to do this from the start, and I think that shows because this isn't as big of a deal as it could have been. But it still feels super weird.
Like, they just got warmed up, started, and you think they're going to do a running leap, but, like, the thing they're leaping over is really low, so they just sort of step over it.
Yeah.
You realize, oh, that wasn't a big hurdle, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is just, like, I guess if I went back to earlier episodes and saw the way they talked about their loved ones, it would be obvious that that's what they were going for, but, like, it's not such a huge, mind-blowing thing that it really changes my perception on anything.
Yeah.
So since Fire Emblem Three Houses, we're not playing with perspective here in really cool ways. It's just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Because even back when we first recorded Zamigo's first episode, I hadn't seen this episode yet. And even then, I said, like, I don't really know if they're dead or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird and ambiguous. So,
Yeah,
like, the thought was always there. It was just... this is their way of rewarding the smart kids, I think.
But yeah, pretty much from that Zamigo episode, actually, I think that was like the first major hint where Akari's just like, if we beat him, we'll get our loved ones back. And it's like, what?
You're saying that like you think it's gonna happen.
What do you think? You're just gonna shoot Zamigo and the souls are gonna fly out and then rematerialize? No, it's because he knows they've been taken.
Right, and I don't think this necessarily is like cheapening death any more than the resurrection plan was.
Yeah, no. Plus, it seems like Noelle's got something going on, so who knows? Maybe someone could have died.
Yeah.
Still a chance.
It does feel weird to complain, like, oh, they set them up as being dead, but they were actually just kidnapped. Like, the plan was always to resurrect them from death.
Yeah.
Like, we were planning on cheapening death as a concept from the beginning. It's fine. This isn't any more cheap. If anything, this is more logical.
Yep.
I say logical involving fucking teleporting ice powers.
Yeah, logical when it involves the treasure of Arsene Lupin, which is magical and can be used by the Hell Mob.
And real. Arsene Lupin is real.
Yep.
In this world.
Arsene Lupin is real, and my friend.
Do the books still exist in this world?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Are they just treated as like... did Arsene Lupin have to sue the author of the Lupin books for defamation? In
well,
this
in this
world?
case, it's nonfiction.
Right. He's just a biographer, I get it. Alright, so, last thing that we want to talk about. Umika and Sakia finally have a scene that's decent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sakia
God.
gives good advice. Umika takes it and leaves, and Sakia's maybe a little bit disappointed, but he's not going to take it
Okay
super
with it.
personally that she wasn't like, oh, date me, Sakia.
It's a charming... Sakia's reaction is kind of charming, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well.
On the whole,
Not
Ryo
good.
Yokoyama is doing his damnedest to salvage Saki's character. It's like, everything I hate about Sakia comes from the script. And any, like, thing I'm willing to forgive him on comes down to Yokoyama's delivery and body acting.
Yeah, the
Like,
acting.
the first time the nice guy comment came on, Yokoyama kind of sold it, actually.
Mhm.
Instead of being, like, incessant whining, it was just, like, like an irony joke. Like a post-irony reference to being a nice guy.
Yeah. So yeah, acting, and of course, scene designers. Life is like bicycle.
Right. I should mention, I meant everything I like about Sakia relating to this.
Yeah.
There are other things I like about Sakia. Where we had that whole episode about protecting everyone else. I think my biggest complaint about this scene is it's episode 39.
Yep.
If this was episode 8, it would be great. Perfect. Excellent pacing on the progression of this relationship. But now we have 12, 11 episodes. We
Yeah.
gotta wrap this up. It's like fall semester of your freshman year in college. Just gonna dick around for 3 months, then pull a couple of all-nighters, it'll be fine.
Speaking from experience.
No, I didn't do that. I always work diligently in my studies.
We're just roasting everyone else.
I mean, that's...
right, random viewer who happened upon episode 39. Your college experience sucked.
That's
more
just the
diligent.
perception of the college experience.
We know that you personally did that, audience member.
But anyways, the only good reactions... I don't want to be too mean, but like... The only reactions to the like Saki Umika thing that I'm like really on board for is the people insisting that they're just friends.
Yep.
In the reverse of people insisting that canonically gay characters are not gay. He's... I don't want to say canonically straight, because you know what? I saw the way Rika looked at Tsukasa.
Yeah. I
don't think Rika's straight. I think that Sakya is gender fluid, and straightness doesn't allow for gender fluidity, so...
It's still ambiguous. They haven't told me otherwise yet.
Yeah. Fucking God.
So on that note...
But yeah, that does it for this episode. I don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR. Fafner is at Fafner Masamune. You can email us at LupinRecap via PatReview@gmail.com, and we will see you in the next episode. Adieu.